Rubber stamp no more. For decades, Chicago's city council was little more than a pliant body of go-along, get-along legislators who would rather spend their time managing fiefdoms than challenge the all-powerful chief executive. Sure, each mayor had token opposition. But remember, Mayor Daley got what he wanted for better or worse for most of 22 years. Ditto Rahm Emanuel. Even Lori Lightfoot, though she had to scrap, was able to get much of her big agenda items passed. Well, those days might be coming to an end. The wheels came off inside the Johnson administration this week with the resignation of the staffer responsible for getting city council on board with his agenda. That's because a recent reorganization meant she now had to report to Managing Deputy for External Relations, Kennedy Bartley, someone who 3 years ago had this to say about police.
If I die, especially at the hands of pigs, don't name after me. You know what I'm saying? I don't want a piece of legislation named after me, a road, none of that. But I would be honored if that got more folks to abolition.
Now, this came as Bartley was working for a progressive activist group closely aligned with the Chicago Teachers Union. She led the group's efforts to lobby city council on behalf of defunding the police department, a cause Mayor Johnson has now distanced himself from. But it didn't stop him from promoting Bartley, who also in 2021 had this to say.
The police lynch black folks every day. Shoot black folks and brown folks and, down every day in the street. And there's still black folks and brown folks who are not abolitionists, who are pro-police.
And Bartley's job now is to work with city council members to help get things accomplished, like solving a $1 billion budget gap. It hasn't gotten off to a good start.
I've called on the mayor to terminate her. I do not believe someone who would use such disparaging language about fellow City of Chicago employees, which the police are, deserves to be on the city payroll.
And I definitely don't want someone so left-wing that we as aldermen can't work together to move things forward for our community.
Should be fired immediately. Not even given time to resign. Fired immediately. Have her box waiting outside with all of her stuff in it at the front door of City Hall on her way out.
Now, the fifth floor turmoil also comes as the mayor struggles to get enough votes to confirm Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez, the progressive firebrand, to be chairman of the all-powerful zoning committee. Alderman Felix Cardona, a more moderate upstart, is at the head of an insurgent campaign to foil the mayor's plans. And let's not forget the failure to wrestle $1 billion more out of Springfield for Chicago public schools. That was never a realistic goal to begin with. All of these things, by the way, are goals of the very powerful Chicago Teachers Union, who helped elect Mayor Johnson to carry out their progressive vision for the city. By the way, Bartley is very closely connected to CTU President Stacey Davis Gates, who in a 2023 WBEZ profile called Bartley, quote, one of the smartest people walking on planet Earth right now. But how smart is it to double down on an agenda that is rapidly losing favor with city council and popularity across the city? Will aldermen take their marching orders from a 29-year-old staffer that is called for abolishing the police? Ninth Ward Alderman Anthony Beal has his answer.
I actually joined the course or the choir to have her removed immediately. She should not be on the government payroll. She should not be paid by taxpayer dollars. And if these are the type of people that the mayor wants to surround himself with, then that explains exactly why the city is in turmoil and chaos that you see right now. We are in the middle of a dysfunctional administration.
And in a statement to Fox 32 Chicago this week, the mayor's office touted the added investments they've made to the police department, and they say Bartley will be a part of that effort. But at this point, the mayor's moves have done nothing but sow distrust between his office and alder people who he will need the support of. Instead of a rubber stamp, this might be where the rubber meets the road, and council says no to Mayor Johnson's wishes. If that's the case, they'll need to do more than that. It's time for aldermen to act as a true legislative body and exert their own vision for the city's future, with or without the mayor on board. And that's our opening shot.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Tonight, the debate heard around the world. Will Harris's dominant performance affect undecideds? Taking the temperature in the swing state of Arizona, we get a check-in from Phoenix. And a federal trial involving Mike Madigan gets underway. Paris on Politics is next.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics, where we take you behind the headlines and beyond the spin. Well, you might as well call this week's Harris-Trump matchup the debate, as in B-A-I-T. Vice President Kamala Harris executed a simple strategy of laying out traps for former President Trump, and he seemed to take it every time, with answers that seemed angry, incoherent sometimes, and full of conspiratorial fear-mongering.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. Each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it.
Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans.
A little sampling of what we all experienced on Tuesday night. Now, the consensus on both sides of the aisle is that Harris won the debate with that strategy. But did she quell concerns about her policy positions, and did she convince any of the remaining undecided voters to come to her side? Well, joining us now is someone who studies those undecided voters and who conducted a unique scientific focus group experiment right here in Chicago during the debate this week. We welcome Elizabeth Giroux, market research specialist for the polling company Ipsos. Great to talk to you again, Elizabeth. First of all, tell us who these undecided voters were and how you found them.
Absolutely. Well, it was a rigorous process to find true undecideds. We used our typical ways to have people take a survey, and then I did some pre-interviews making sure that they really, truly could not make a decision before the debate. I also was careful to, ask them where they were leaning, and so I picked about half of them leaning in the Trump's direction and half of them leaning in the Harris direction, but all of them uncertain at the time.
And we're watching them hooked up to these biometric machines. Tell us what the machines were measuring.
Yeah, this is really cool. So they were in something called a neurocube. So you can see it in that cubicle. And we measured 3 different things. There's a camera that you're looking at right now that measures their facial expression. And then we were in the control room watching. So this codes facial expression. We know if they're angry, if they're joyful, if they're disgusted, whatever it was at any point in the debate. This is second by second. The things that you saw on the fingers there, that was a heart rate monitor. So that tells us if they're really, comprehending things, involved, like when your heart goes up, you're more interested, that sort of thing. And then there was some skin response. So it's kind of like if you're on a roller coaster or if you're on the edge of a cliff and your palms get sweaty. We know if that happens and you're watching a debate, that something interesting is happening inside of you physiologically. And then I was able to ask about those moments in the focus group after the fact.
All right, so say someone's hands got sweaty at a certain moment. What moments were those and what did they mean?
Some of the most interesting moments from the data are when Trump was talking about, eating cats and dogs. So I think you just played that clip.
Right.
That was one of them. The healthcare discussion about women is particularly under the skin of women, as you might imagine. The handshake, believe it or not, the handshake before the debate. There you go. Wow, you guys are on it. This was a pivotal moment. I was sort of surprised by that because I didn't actually see the handshake. I was doing something in another room.
Maybe people were surprised.
But when I brought him in the
were
focus group, that's the first. I said, what are you going to remember most?
Yeah.
It was that original moment when Kamala Harris essentially forced a handshake. She set a tone and everybody was like, wow, she's a strong woman. Communicated a lot.
Very interesting strategy. Okay, so to the purpose of this, what were the ultimate results of the focus group?
So I asked who won the debate. All 5 hands went up for Kamala Harris. So it's clear that undecided voters feel like Kamala Harris won the debate. Then I asked if any of them knew who they were going to vote for, because remember, they came in completely undecided. 2 of them had made a decision. And these were 2 people formerly leaning Trump had decided that now they're going to vote for Kamala Harris after the debate. The remaining 3 were still undecided. And that's mostly because they felt like they still want to learn a little bit more about policy.
All right, let's take a look at the clip when you asked them who they thought won the debate.
Who won the debate in your opinion?
Kamala.
How many say Kamala won the debate? Oh, gee, all 5 of you. Seriously?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
He underestimated her.
Yeah.
He said that she was an idiot. She failed the bar twice. And so sometimes when you say things, I think you begin to believe it. I think he just underestimated her, and he's not going to be able to recover from the people who got a chance to see her shine that wouldn't have if he was just a little bit more prepared.
Right.
He did underestimate her, and even during the debate, he started name calling her specifically. And once you start name calling, it's like I'm done with you once you start with the names.
So interesting there. So you were also measuring results in swing states during the debate. Does this square with what you saw in some of the toss-up states?
It does, and there's even more, Paris. So we looked at the data in swing states. I have never seen this. I've been doing this 24 years. But when Kamala Harris was speaking, the undecided voters were above 0 for likability. So if you think about a line, a 0, and above it means you like what you're hearing, the undecided voters when Kamala was speaking were almost always over 0. The undecided voters when Trump was speaking were almost always under 0. And that level of consistency across an entire debate is pretty rare.
That's interesting. It might say that undecideds, for the most part, maybe don't like Trump personally, but they're still trying to figure out who they like more on policy. Let's take a look at another clip here when you asked folks if they had changed their minds as a result of the debate.
Who here changed who you thought you would be voting for because of the debate tonight? Like you went in feeling like you were going to vote for one person, now you're leaning in the other direction. Dion? Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, really?
Well, I mean, I was more undecided, but in the back of my mind, I thought I'd really vote for Trump. I didn't think this debate was even going to make a dent like it did today. I'm very surprised.
Okay.
So, and it really got my attention, you know.
What's the thing that makes you not able to vote for Trump now when you have before?
He just looked like a fool up there.
Again, same question. Is this consistent with what you saw across the country?
I didn't get the chance to interview everybody across the country, but the data would suggest that undecided voters are leaning in Trump's direction after this debate. Now, we don't know if that'll hold. Typically, a debate does not decide an election, but we are in unprecedented times. So Ipsos is going to continue, with our polling to see what kind of bump, if any, Kamala Harris gets. That voter there, Andrea, she's a Republican, and she was undecided, but really thought she was going to vote for Trump. So that was kind of a big moment in the group.
All right, Elizabeth Giroux, fascinating research here, market researcher with Ipsos. We hope to talk to you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Taking the temperature in the swing state of Arizona.
Being the weather authority isn't something that I take lightly.
When you're the authority, people count on you.
And in Chicago, of course, the weather can change like that.
It's about getting on the air fast when there's severe weather.
Among the tools at our disposal now is the ability to really look into a storm.
We now have the technology to be able to get down to that street level.
To be as precise as possible.
Accurate, clear, and immediate delivery of severe weather forecasts. That's what it means to be the weather authority.
They've directed the world's best-loved films. Now they reveal how movie magic is made.
If I've done my job right, you're left with interesting questions.
Jake Hamilton with a film school like no other.
Even though this is Barbie, which is this globally known brand, it feels just as personal to me as a filmmaker.
And action. Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. To get Fox Local on your smart TV, search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today. How did the leader of a small village become known as the worst mayor in America?
She cannot continue to intimidate and gangster her way through this.
From showy billboards and expensive police bodyguards to Vegas trips and retaliation allegations, we bring you an inside look into Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the drama in Dolton. Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
Breaking news, the 2024 election will not be decided in Illinois. It will, however, be decided in a handful of swing states. So between now and November, we want to get the temperature on the ground in some of those states. And this week, we went to one of the hottest ones, Arizona. I spoke with local Fox anchor Ellen McNamara about polling showing the race a toss-up down there in the Southwest.
You know, when Joe Biden was still in the race, Trump was basically kind of guaranteed a win here, according to polling anyway. And Cook Political had basically given Arizona to Trump, said that it was going to lean Republican. But once the VP became the nominee, then she started to inch up. And Cook Political has now made Arizona a toss-up. So it is all back in play now once again. Now, Trump is leading just by a little bit. It's neck and neck, but it is within the margin of error right now. So yes, I mean, this is going to be a battleground state. We had J.D. Vance here just last week. We have Tim Walz here today. We have Donald Trump in Tucson on Thursday. So both campaigns know how important our state is to win this election.
Certainly going to be a heavily trafficked state by both campaigns from now until November. You know, we've read the reports that the former president and his allies are already laying the groundwork to perhaps challenge or even intimidate voters and poll workers in states like Arizona. How is the Secretary of State preparing for that, and are election workers concerned about that?
You know, we haven't heard about concerns just yet. I do want to be clear. We just heard from the Maricopa County officials just this week, in fact, kind of giving us a preview, talking about what we can expect with the general election. And those officials have always worked very closely with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We are the 4th largest county in the country. And we know, you guys probably remember in 2020, all eyes were on Maricopa County. There were protests, potential riots. People were worried about that. So I think that based on what happened in 2020, there have been a lot of places where they have improved upon, but also just like they've learned how to maybe we can respond to this in a better manner. And so the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, like in 2022, when we had the race for the governor, they held a press conference. They were out in full force. They were out at every polling place, showing that they were there to provide assistance if needed. 2022 was okay. We didn't have any significant problems. So we're hoping that that is going to be the case in 2024 as well.
Certainly Maricopa County, one of the most watched counties in the country. Give us a sense here in Chicago how the situation at the Arizona border with Mexico plays into the politics of Arizona residents and into this race.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a crucial issue, and we've heard from people all across the country, even people in New Hampshire, say that the border is one of the #1 issues that they're voting on for this election. And here in Arizona, we are a border state. It is incredibly important, and that is why Trump continues to do so well, because people believe that he and his policies are what's best for our country when it comes to the border. Now, the border is going to be on the ballot in November, and there will be a measure on the ballot that if it should pass, it would give local law enforcement the ability to arrest anyone who crosses the border illegally. It would basically give them federal power to do so. So that will be on the ballot. Abortion will also be on the ballot too. So we don't know, those might cancel each other out. We're not sure, but abortion will be on the ballot. And if that should pass, then it would enshrine abortion rights into our state constitution, and it would allow a woman to have an abortion up to fetal viability, which that generally speaking is about 24 weeks. So those two issues we're watching very, very closely.
And for more on where this race stands now, we're joined by your favorite former Fox 32 political reporter and now political analyst, Mike Flannery. Mike, let's get into the debate. The consensus was Harris won by this strategy of dangling that bait in front of Donald Trump, that chum, and Trump coming and eating it every time. But does that move the needle? Does that matter where it counts?
These debates are rarely decisive. I'm old enough to remember Barack Obama apologizing for messing up in a debate where he was widely perceived to have lost. You know, he got the maximum 2 terms in the White House despite all of that. Rarely do you see a knockout punch like Donald Trump threw at Joe Biden a few weeks ago. By the time voting rolls around, and look, by Thursday of this coming week, Illinois election authorities are scheduled to mail out the military overseas ballots. So voting starts very soon, but the bulk of people are going to be voting up until November 5th. Will this be, in retrospect, a knockout punch? I doubt it.
You know, this race is so close nationally, but also in these swing states. Do you see that changing in the polling that comes out after this debate?
No, well, you know, there's a group M3 that has done some polling here in the collar counties, in particular around Chicago, where they have found, I think, a phenomenon pre-debate. Now, this was pre-debate that replicates what you heard about happening in Phoenix and Maricopa County and in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. In Chicago's collar counties, they saw pre-debate about 1 percentage point of 2020 Trump voters moving to Kamala Harris pre-debate, but about 5 percentage points in heavily male of 2020 Biden voters moving to Trump. So the switches taking part out in the suburbs were heavily in favor of Trump. You know, and again, I think it's a fairly small group of people who haven't made their minds up.
And that means that both sides are going to have to work on turning out their base. You saw Taylor Swift give an endorsement, and it's resulted in nearly 500,000 new voter registrations here. Did Harris do enough this week to quell some of the concerns that undecideds had, that she didn't lay out much in the way of policy?
Well, yeah, I don't think she laid out a lot of new things in terms of policy, but I'm going to tell you, Paris, I think that she did hit a home run in terms of looking presidential, looking like a potential commander-in-chief, particularly by being so aggressive against Trump, you know, denouncing him as a disgrace. And he kind of played into that by not looking at her. And she threw down repeatedly, challenge after challenge at him, went after him as a stooge of Vladimir Putin. And he was strangely passive in responding to it and ineffective. I thought that she, you know, maybe it was a low bar, some have complained, but I think she did get over that.
All right, Mike Flannery, stay right there because we're going to get into some local issues when we come back. More with political analyst Mike Flannery right after this.
Your good day streams here. Trust the Good Day Chicago crew to get your day started right. The wake-up news, weather, and traffic you need with a good time, guaranteed. Streaming live on your smart TV. Weekday mornings at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Discover Chicago's hidden gems and untold tales.
If you look up, odds are you're seeing our work.
They have such an intense and fierce look when they swoop down and grab a fish.
3, 2, 1, go!
Fox 32's photographers share the stories they've captured with you.
Fountain jet shoots up about 150 feet. Our designers, you know, the sky is their canvas.
See Chicago through their unique lens. Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Download Fox Local on these streaming platforms and start watching.
Back with our political analyst, Mike Flannery. Mike, there isn't much in the way of contested races in Illinois or Chicago, but there is when you get really granular in the city of Chicago, the newly created elected Chicago School Board. That's going to be very closely watched.
Well, it's closely watched, and again, we're seeing perhaps some fingerprints of the new machine, the Chicago Teachers Union, which promised that this would be an opportunity for parents and other voters to express their views and to make a choice. Well, in one South Side district, G2 Brown is the only candidate on the ballot. A guy who's been a close ally and a spokesman for groups that the Teachers Union has been part of for decades. He's got a free pass to getting on the school board. A candidate who
so much for democracy.
A candidate who was opposed to him has withdrawn. Raising some questions about what's really going on. Now there are some groups. Urban Center is one. Dave Nyack, candidate who ran for state senate up on the northwest side in opposition to the teachers union-backed candidate who won. He's formed a Better Education Illinois group.
And there's charter schools forming groups. And so they have deep pockets. Is this a situation of be careful what you wish for? If you're CTU, you wanted this elected school board ostensibly because you wanted to put your people there to enact your agenda. But could these other groups outspend them and maybe win some of these seats?
Well, we'll see, but obviously Mayor Johnson's having some trouble getting Pedro Martinez and the current school board to sign off on the reckless and ridiculous budget decisions. They want the school board to borrow more than $1 billion, go into HOC, which would once again lower the Board of Ed's credit rating to junk status. They want to, so far they're refusing to do that, but after these new board members are in place in January, maybe he'll have the muscle to do that.
We got to talk about an underreported story this week. There is a federal trial going on. It involves Mike Madigan. The plaintiff here is, the person on trial is an executive, a former executive with AT&T, accused of bribing Mike Madigan. What's at stake here?
Well, what's at stake is this theory that the hiring of a lobbyist who the defendant, the former executive of AT&T, wrote in emails was a drunk and was hated by Republican lawmakers, was not a very good guy, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and hire him to make Mike Madigan happy. But this was after some legislation that AT&T wanted that was worth millions and millions of dollars to them. This was after that had been approved. And so it, was this a quid pro quo? The Supreme Court has addressed this, has put that issue back into play, and has made it more difficult for federal prosecutors to convict on these kinds of charges. This, of course, is a prelude to Mike Madigan's trial beginning next month.
And you mentioned that Supreme Court decision. Does that give it the chance that this Madigan case, the main event, won't ever actually get to trial? I mean, clearly they want to throw this case out based on the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah, I think it's likely to get to trial. I think we're likely to get there. I will say that defense lawyer, former U.S. Attorney Lazar, who represented the former head of ComEd, who was convicted along one of the ComEd 4 convicted previously in a trial in which this same kind of hiring of people for Madigan was treated as the feds claimed it was a bribe. He's convinced me that after the Supreme Court ruling, some of this may be in play. I think they may have a case going on appeal. So let's see how that appeal goes. Let's see how this AT&T case goes.
All right, Mike Flannery, well, we'll be talking to you all throughout. Thanks for joining us. And that is our show for this week. Have a wonderful weekend. Go Bears. So long, everyone.
Want to know Chicago politics? Ask Paris.
Elections, conventions, corruption. there's a lot to get to.
Paris Schutz, the most trusted name in Chicago politics.
Making sense of the issues that impact all of our lives.
He's on Fox Chicago.
I'm Paris Schutz, and I get to cover politics in the world's most fascinating political city.
Find Paris on air on Fox32Chicago.com and streaming on Fox Local.
Let's get started.
Our journey to $250,000 begins now.
TV's #1 game show is back and even bigger.
This is not the same floor.
Now with 100 players battling for territory.
There's so much strategy this season.
If you want to rule
Taylor Swift songs,
you have to duel.
Hero, love, together, haze.
Light it up!
The Floor premieres Wednesday, September 25th after The Masked Singer on Fox.